Hey, what's up, YouTube? Today we are going to learn about the email provider inside of Auth.js version 5. So the email provider uses email to send magic links that can be used to sign in. And this will also create a user in the database as long as the email address given isn't already associated with an existing user. So no more need for the credentials provider that require the user to create a username and password, and also no more need for an OAuth provider like a Google or GitHub account. All the user needs to do is submit their email. We'll send them an email with a magic link inside. They click the link that allows them to sign in, and it'll also create a user in the database associated with that email. It's that simple. So the technologies and framework we're going to use is we're going to use Next.js 14 as the framework. The technologies, we're going to use MongoDB for the database, Prisma ORM to connect the database to our application. We're also going to use Resend, which is going to send modern emails using a React application. We're going to use, obviously, Auth.js, which is going to authenticate the user. We'll also use TailwindCSS in conjunction with shadcnUI for the UI. So if this sounds interesting to you, hit that like button so other people like you can see the video and get more of a reach on YouTube. And then also hit the subscribe button if you like content similar to this. But before we get started, I do want to go over a demo of how this is going to work. So I have my development server open on localhost 3000/sign-in. We're going to sign in by with our email. So all we got to do is submit our email. We click continue with email. Email was sent to our account. We're going to look at my Gmail account. As you can see, we had an email sent to me 0 minutes ago. And it's asking us to sign in to localhost 3000, and the magic link is this button right here. So when we click it, it's going to sign us in, and as you can see, it's showing our data, which is our email, on the UI of localhost 3000/dashboard. So that means we are signed in, and a user was also created in the MongoDB database, and then we could just click the sign out button, and now we're signed out. So stick around. We're going to go over how to do this. And also, like I said, don't forget, hit the like button and also subscribe for more content just like this. Okay, so if you're watching this tutorial, you should know how to create a Next.js 14 application. All you have to do is open up your terminal and run the command npx create-next-app at latest, name your project, and then answer all of the prompted questions that come your way. And then you should end up on a page like this. It's a boilerplate Next.js 14 application. Has an app directory, node modules, a public folder, and a bunch of configuration JSON files and such. So that's where I am right now with you. So if you want to pause the video, create your next application, and then repause it, and then we'll be back to where we are. After we do that, we are going to go back to the Auth.js docs, and we are going to go under the upgrade guide version 5. So like I said, we are using version 5 of Auth.js. Technically it's still in beta if you're watching this. If you're watching this really in the future, then maybe it's not in beta anymore and it's in production, but right now it's in beta. And the way we're going to use version 5 is we have to install this package, which is next-auth app beta. So we're going to copy this, go back to our code, open our terminal, and obviously install the package. This is the only thing I've done so far with the code. So we're going to go back to the docs, and if you look in the upgrade guide version 5, you can see they have new features, breaking changes, configuration. We're just going to go over the most important things inside of the upgrade guide that are related to the email provider. So the main first step we want to do is we want to set up Auth.js, and that is the configuration step. So we need to configure Auth.js to our application so we can actually utilize its capabilities. So before we actually configure it, I want to go over the edge compatibility because this is very important. Because we are using Prisma ORM, that means most adapters rely on an ORM or library that is not yet compatible with the Edge runtime. And Prisma ORM actually falls underneath this category, and it isn't actually compatible with Edge runtime. So that means we have to create 3 configuration files inside of our project. The first one we're going to create is the auth.config.ts file. The second one we're going to create is this auth.ts file. And then the third one we are going to create is the catch all route. And that's the same route we used in version 4, which is this /API /auth /catch all next auth /route.ts. This is where we initialized all of our providers, our asynchronous callbacks. All of the good things were in this pretty much catch all route. But now we're separating it into 3 different files. So the first file I want to create is this auth.config.ts file. So we're going to go back to our VS Code editor or your text editor. And on the root layer of your application, we're going to create a new file called auth.config.ts. So I want to go over what this auth.config.ts does. All we're doing in this file is initializing a provider. And in our case, we're initializing the email provider. So if we go back to the docs, they, in the example, are initializing a GitHub provider. We're just going to copy this and then adjust it to our liking. So we're going to remove GitHub. We're going to import the email provider. And this is going to come from next-auth /providers /email. We'll keep the next auth config because we need that. And then we're just going to replace the GitHub here with the email provider. And this is going to take in parameters inside of its object. So we need this. So right now we are done with the auth.config.ts file until we actually implement Prism and MongoDB onto our application. So the next file we want to do is the auth.ts file. So if we go to our code, we're going to create an auth.ts file, and this is where we're going to add the adapter together with the JWT session strategy. So we're just going to do the JWT session strategy for now, and then also we're importing the auth config, which is the file we just made, into this file. So let me copy this. Or actually, I'm not going to copy this because our code is going to be a little different than this example. So we're just going to write it by hand. So inside the root layer, again, we're going to do an auth.ts file. And inside the auth.ts file, we're going to import, I don't know why it's doing that. There we go. Import next.auth. And this is going to come from next.auth. We're also going to import the auth config. We're going to import auth config, and this is coming from the file we just created. It's that auth.config file right here. And then there's going to be 2 other imports that we're going to do, but they're related to Prism, which we haven't set up. So we'll do that and come back later when we're on that step. Next, we're going to do an export const, and this is going to be an object. And inside, we are going to export the handlers. And the handlers that Next.auth uses, or Auth.js, is the get and the post request, just like that. That's the syntax of how it's going to look. We're also going to export the auth. This is how we're going to be able to authenticate the user inside of our application. This is where we're going to be able to show the data of that specific user. So like, for example, their email, their name, their username, whatever it is. So in version 4, you either use the use session hook or you use the get server side props, which was on the server side to get the user. Now it's all done using this specific keyword called auth. Next thing I want to import is the sign in function and the sign out. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then this is going to equal next auth. And this next auth is going to take in an object. And inside of this is where we're going to establish the adapter. We're going to establish what session strategy we're doing. This is where you could put your asynchronous callbacks, your events, your pages. This is where all of the main magic happens inside of this object. So the only thing we're going to do now is we're going to add the session, which the session is going to be a strategy of JWT. And then we're also going to do spread everything out inside of the auth config file, which is the file we created here. So we use the spread syntax just like that. And then we'll come back and add the adapter when we add Prism, but this file is done for now. And then the last file we're going to add is the catch all route. So the last configuration file. So inside of the app, folder, we're going to have another folder called API, another folder called Auth, and then a catch-all route. So you're going to use the bracket notation, ... next auth, closing bracket. It's going to be a route.ts file. And then all this is actually one line of code. I'm going to copy this over, and this is from the docs. Or you could just copy it here. We're just exporting the get and post from the @auth. And this @auth is this file right here, the auth.ts file. So everything in the auth.config file is exported and it goes inside the auth.ts, and everything in the auth.ts file is exported and it's caught in this catch-all route, which is pretty much the path what we need to when we want to use the email provider, you want to use the credentials provider, the GitHub provider. You're going to see the same endpoint path of each one. So for example, if you're using the callbacks at the end of the endpoint, you're going to see that it goes to the same path, which is this catch-all route here. And that's why we're catching every get and post request inside of this route. So that's kind of how it works right there. So that is pretty much setting up the configuration files there. The last thing I want to do before moving on to Prism and MongoDB is we must install Node Mailer. So no matter what you use, even though we're using Resend, you must install Node Mailer for the email provider to work. I honestly don't know why, but if you don't, you're going to get an error. So we're going to install that package right now. Okay, first let's set up Prism. So what we're going to do is we have to install the package, and we're going to install it as a dev dependency Prism. And then the other one we want to install is the Prism client. So we'll just do Prism/client, and we're going to install those two packages to start. After we install this, we must initialize Prism. So we're going to do npx prism init. And what this is going to do, it's going to do two things. It's going to create a Prism folder, and it's also going to create a .env file on the root of your project. So you can see the .env here, and the Prism folder with the schema.prism inside of it. So after we do this, I want to create a folder on the root layer, and this is going to be a lib folder. And inside of this, this is where we're going to pretty much do the connection to our database with Prism, because you only want to do the database connection once when you're in the development server. You don't want to keep making requests to the database every time you have to do a method to a specific user. So we're going to call this file database.ts. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the code over and explain what it's doing. So we're using the Prism client, and the Prism client pretty much is just a package used to interact with the database and provides pretty much methods for querying, reading, and writing data. So that's what the Prism client does. And what we're doing is on line 3, we're declaring a global state of Prism. It's either going to be the Prism client or undefined. Okay. And obviously when we first start, before we even make a request, the global state is going to be undefined. Next, we are exporting the Prism variable, and the Prism variable takes in the type Prism client. And this is going to either equal the global state of the Prism, or it's going to initialize the new Prism client, and then it will turn that new Prism client into the global.prism, which will equal Prism. So this is the best and most efficient way to actually keep initializing your database with the Prism client, by creating a separate file like I did, and then we're just going to export this Prism and use Prism instead of the Prism client in every file. So after setting up this specific file, I do want to go inside the schema.prism, and we could change off the bat, we could change this to MongoDB. And we are going to create two different models. So this is like types that the user is going to have. So I'm going to copy and paste that stuff over as well. So for the user model, which is going to be our user in our database, we're going to have an ID, which is unique to the user. And it has this decorator, which is very specific only to MongoDB. So make sure you use this decorator if you're using MongoDB. And if you're using a different one, check the docs and see what the decorator you have to use for that specific database. But we're also going to have a name, which is optional, a password optional, email verified optional, and string optional. So the only thing we're making required is the ID, but we're also going to have an email. So if you want to make this required, go ahead, but I'm just going to leave it as optional for now. So we're going to have the user model here, and the other model we have to create is a verification token. So like I explained at the beginning of this video, we are sending a verification token to the user when they pretty much submit their email. And after they click that magic link, the verification token is going to go away. It's going to get deleted because we don't need that verification token specifically anymore because they already verified their account by clicking the link. So we need to make a model for that verification token. And this is going to be the model here. It's going to have an ID, an identifier, an email, a token, and expires. So that is good for now. And the next thing I want to do is I want to create the database. And then after that, we're going to run a few Prism executions down here pretty much so we can actually get the database and Prism connected. So I'm going to open up a new Google Chrome tab. We're going to go to MongoDB. And you're either going to sign up for an account or log in. So I'm just going to sign in with my Google account. And then your screen should look something like this. On the top left, you can click New Project or scroll down to New Project. And what we're going to call this is, you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call this Auth.js Email Provider. We don't need to add members or set permissions, so create the project. We're going to create a deployment. We're going to use the free version, so make sure you go to free. We're going to use AWS as the provider. Use your recommended region with the star. And then your cluster name, I'm going to keep mine as is, but you could change it to whatever. It doesn't matter. Next step is we need to create a username and password. This is important. You must know your username and password so you could connect it with your database connection string. I'm going to copy this password, open a notepad, and just paste the new password here. So we're going to click Create User. And we're going to use my local environment and then also add your IP address. And then we're just going to click Finish and Close. And then we're just going to have to connect the database now. So to connect it, we click Connect, click MongoDB for VS Code. We're going to copy the connection string. We are going to go back to our code, go in the .env file, remove this database URL value string, replace it with yours, and then you see password. We have to get our password, copy it, and then replace it right here as well. And then at the end of this, we need to send it to a specific collection. We are going to call it users because we are getting users inside of this database. So that's why I'm naming it users. You can name this whatever you want, but you do need to create a name at the end after this .net /. So now that we have that database set up, what we can do now is we can actually make sure our Prism and database are pretty much in sync. So to do that, we're going to say npx prism generate. And then we're going to say npx prism db push. And this is going to push all information to our database. Sometimes you have this warning. I'm just going to click allow. And then after, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up a new tab. And I'm going to run the command npx prism studio. And what it's going to do is going to open up a localhost 5555. And it's going to show our models. And we can open up our models. And as you can see, we have the user model, which we created, and the verification token model. And then you can see the properties above here. So everything looks good. And then everything looks good. And if you really want to, you could actually check your database too. You're just going to click database over here, browse collections. And then you can see we have a user and a verification token with obviously nothing in there yet. So we have successfully connected MongoDB and Prism to our application. And now we are ready to set up the email provider with whatever provider of email you're sending it with. And for our case, we're sending with Resend, which allows us to send emails through React applications. Okay, so if you go to resend.com/home, you should land on a page like this. This is email for developers. It says it's the best API to reach humans instead of the spam folder. You could build, test, and deliver transactional emails at scale. So one of the reasons why I like this is because they have a free tier that is very giving. You can actually send 3,000 emails a month, 100 emails a day for free. You only do get one domain, which is still not bad for something that's free. And all you have to do is click get started or sign in if you have an account. I have an account already. I have it with my GitHub, so I'm just going to log in with GitHub. And you should be on a dashboard, something like this. If it's your first time, you're going to have 0 total emails here sent. And I'm just going to walk you through a few things real quick. Like I said, let me just go to the settings and show you the tier system. So like I said, 3,000 emails a month comes to $0 a month. If you want to send 50,000 emails a month, it's only $20 a month. You get unlimited domains, other features you could look through, but it's priced very, very fair, this website. And I do recommend using them. I'm not affiliated with them whatsoever, just a really nice email thing I found out as well through YouTube. So after you have this and you have an account, you logged in, we are going to go to settings tab, and we are going to send emails using the SMTP method. So if we go back to the upgrade guide version 5, and then we go to email provider, you can see you can send emails through the SMPT way, or you could use the HTTP based email provider. So what we're doing is we're using the SMTP way, and this sends emails using the SMTP instead of the REST API. See documentation for more. But it gives us a few values here. It gives us the host, the port, the user, and the password, which is your API key. So we are going to set this up, and this is going to be inside of our auth.config file. So if we go back, I'm going to close all of the files real quick, close these up. Let's go to our auth.config file. And inside of the email provider, that's where we're going to add these properties. So I'm just going to copy and paste these over and explain what I did. It's not much code. You should be able to understand what I'm doing. So let's go to the auth.config. Okay, so what I have here is we have the email provider that accepts an object. Inside of it, we have an ID. I just named it email. Name, I just named it email as well. The reason why we're going to have this name is because when you use the sign-in method, we have to associate it with the name. So I just named it email just to make it simple. And then this is the server, and we are going to use the configuration object to configure our resend to our email provider. So we're going to have all of these variables, as you can see, inside of our .env file. So we have the email server host, the email server port, the server user, the server password, and the email from. So if we go back to our code, we could just copy this, go back to our env file, and then we're going to paste all these. So you're going to go there, and you're going to paste all these just to make sure you're actually writing them right. And I'll show you exactly where they get these values from on Resend, which was that page we just looked at beforehand. Okay, so let's go back to Resend. And as you can see, the host, that is the host, smtp.resend.com. So we're just going to do equals. There's the host. Okay, the port. We could just go back to resend. The port is 465. So 465. It's really this simple. Okay, the user is Resend, which is there. So Resend. The password is your API key. So if you go over here to API keys, all you have to do is go to API keys, click create API key, name your key whatever you want, give it full access, and just click add. And then your API key will show up. You add it to your password in your env file, and you're good to go. I'm not going to show my API key on screen because you shouldn't show yours to anybody. So right now I'm going to leave that blank, and then I'll add mine off screen. And the email from is going to be this onboarding@resend.dev. And the only reason why I'm saying use this email from is because this is the only one you can use right now unless you have a custom domain. So the free tier, like I said, gives you one custom domain. So if you're using your custom domain, you can use an email that has your domain at the end of the email. So like a professional email. If you don't have a domain, you have to use the onboarding@resend.dev. That is the only way you're going to be able to test this out and see if it works. Okay. And then the last key I want to add is the auth_secret. So if you don't add this key, you're not going to be able to you're going to get errors for the email provider, and it's going to say in the server log here that you need to add auth secret key. This is just necessary for Auth.js to actually work. So add auth secret key. It could be anything you want. Make it hard so people don't guess it. So let me turn off my screen real quick and add my password, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, and now since you have all your env variables up to date, as you see, we're back in the auth.config.ts file. All of these now have actual values in them because we updated them in the env file. Next thing I want to do is I want to go back to the auth.ts file, and I want to update us in this because we need to add the Prism adapter. So we need to actually connect Prism to the email provider, which will hook up our database and the email provider, so both are talking to each other in a sense. So to do that, we're going to have to actually install one package. So we're going to install npm I at auth/prism-adapter. And you're probably wondering where I got this from. It's from the docs. All you got to do is just go to the adapter, click Prism, and it'll show you how to download this specific package. This will allow us to use the adapter inside of the auth.ts file. So next thing we want to do is we want to import the Prism adapter from the auth/prism adapter. And then we also need to import Prism. And this is going to come from @/lib and then /database. Because that is what we have right here inside our lib folder. We're getting the global Prism here as well. Okay, so right above the session, we could just say adapter and then Prism adapter, and then we're passing in the global Prism state inside of the adapter. Okay, and like I said, if you want, you guys can add asynchronous callbacks in here, like the async JWT, the session. You could add events, and it'll all be in this next auth, and just make sure you have commas after each one like I do here. I just put a comma here as well. So now we're done with the auth.config file, the auth.ts file, and we're completely obviously done with the catch all route as well. So now that we have our resend ready to go and it's set up, you can actually go to the overview page, and actually you can go to the emails page, and then you can see when emails were sent. So you could just see when these emails were sent. You have a log here, and then also you're obviously going to be able to see the email in your Gmail account. Another very important thing we're going to do before we test it out is whatever email you're signed in with Resend. So mine's here at the bottom left. And as you can see, it's my dabrettwestwood@gmail. You need to use this when signing in with your localhost 3000. Reason being is because if you don't have a custom domain, like I'm not using custom domain right now, you must use the email that's associated with your Resend account. So that's the only way onboarding at resend.com is going to be able to send you an email as if it's associated with your Resend account. So other than that, let's go back to our code. And it looks like we are ready to go. Obviously, we didn't create a custom sign-in form, but we could still use the sign-in form from the catch-all route that Auth.js gives us. So it's going to be the UI that they created, which is very basic, very simple. But the point in this video is I want to show you how to get the email provider up and running. And then after this, I will show you the code of how my shadcn looks inside of a form and how we could connect that with email provider. It's very simple. It's less than a line of code. But let's test this out for us right now. So our UI is going to be the Next.js 14 boilerplate, which is totally fine. So we're going to say npm run dev. We're going to open up localhost 3000. And as you can see, it's the boilerplate for Next.js. But the thing we're going to go to is we're going to go to the catch-all route. So /API /auth. And then they have a sign-in route. So voila. So the sign-in route is pretty much going to show you the provider that you enabled. So if you enable the credentials provider and you go to this route, you're going to see the credentials here. If you enable the Google provider, you're going to see the Google provider. We enabled the email provider, so we see the email provider. So we're going to enter the email that's associated with our Resend account. We're going to click sign in with email. And if you get this message, check your email, a sign-in link has been sent to your email address, that means you did everything right. If you didn't do everything right, you're going to get an error message right here. And then you could just check your VS Code logs right here and see what the error is. So we're going to see if everything's working. First off, before accepting the magic link, I want to open up Prism Studio real quick. I want to refresh the page. And you can see now we have one verification token. Let me zoom in. So we sent that verification token to my email. So we have this actually enabled, and like it is, it's going to be enabled for the next 24 hours. But as you can see, we don't have a user yet because we haven't clicked the link. So we're going to go to my email. And as you can see, we have a new email that was sent 0 minutes ago. And we're going to click sign in. And when we click sign in, we get redirected to a dashboard page. Obviously, the page can't be found because we never created one. But what we can do is we can look at our Prism Studio, refresh the page. Our verification token is 0 now, and our user says 1. So now we have one user, which is my email, dabrettwestwood@gmail.com. To verify even further, you can check your database, and the database is going to have right here user, and it's going to say dabrettwestwood@gmail.com. So you can see I have it in my database as well after I click the link. So the email provider is working how it should. And like I said, I want to reiterate. So we're going to the API /auth/signin, and this page UI is created by Auth.js. I didn't create this page. So next I want to show you the code that I used to create the page. I'm not going to go step by step over it because this tutorial is for the email provider only, but I do want to show you how you can implement it into your own custom sign-in page. Okay, so this is the custom sign-in page that you saw in the demo at the beginning of the video. I want to show you how you can implement the email provider with your custom sign-in page. I'm not going to show you how to make this. I will have the code though in a GitHub repository in the description below. So if you do want to copy this exact form, you can. So if we go to the code real quick, which is my sign in with email, I'm using shadcn. So I'm using shadcnUI, which is this. It's a really great UI library that you could have components that you could customize yourself. and you have pretty much full access to the components code, which you could do whatever you want to these components and make them very, very customized to your application. So what I'm using is I'm using the form from shadcn, the card, the input, and the button. And then I'm also using Zod to validate the form. And what I'm doing here is I have a form, as you can see here. And what the form is doing, it is calling a server action called login. So you have the form here, and as you can see, as on submit form.handle on submit, and it's calling the on submit function, which is here. And then I have a server action called login. And so we're sending all the values to the login server action. And then this login server action checks the data again, pretty much. And then what it's doing down here, it is calling the sign in function, right? Remember, we used the sign in function, and this sign in function is inside of this Auth.js file, as you can see here. So it was the handlers, the auth, the sign in, and sign out. So now we could use the sign in inside of the server action. So obviously we mark the file as use server. We import the sign in from @/auth. And then we do sign in. The first parameter it takes in is the name, email. And the reason why we're using email is if you look in the auth.config.ts file, I named it email. So that's why I put the name as email. And then the second parameter I give it the email, which is the email that we got from the actual form. So it's the email that the user typed in. So for my example, it would be dabrettwestwood@gmail.com. That would be the email because we're sending it to this login server action. And then the third parameter is going to be the redirect to. So where do I want to redirect after we sign in? And I want to redirect to the dashboard page. And then all I'm sending back is success email sent to blank. And that's the success message you see on the UI that shows in green. So that is a simple walkthrough. That is the line of code. So create a form. Like I said, I'm going to have this GitHub repository inside of the description below. So if you want to copy, you can. But you're going to create a form, call a server action or call an API endpoint, use the sign in method on the server, and then just pass in the name of the provider that you give it. So mine was email. Pass in the actual email and a redirect to. It's that simple. One line of code, and you could use your custom sign-in page. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you got a ton of value out of it. And if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them down in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to get to them. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you guys can actually implement this into an actual application. And thank you guys for choosing to watch to the end. And if you can, hit that like button and also subscribe for more content. Thank you again, and have a good day.